A quiet office at the front line. February 19th, 1943. The hills outside Sidi Bou Zid, Tunisia. Dust hangs low in the morning air, fine as powder, drifting through olive groves shattered by shellfire. The ground trembles with distant artillery, not close enough to be seen, but close enough to be felt through the soles of boots. Engines idle somewhere beyond the ridge, German armor waiting, American armor burning from the night before. Inside a low, whitewashed farmhouse pressed into service as a command post, Brigadier General Maurice Rose stands over a folding table. The map beneath his hands is smudged with fingerprints and grease pencil marks. Roads are circled, wadis traced. Enemy arrows crowd the paper like a clenched fist. Rose is 47, compact, sharp-eyed, his uniform dusty from the same roads his men have driven since dawn. There is no flourish to him, no visible medals. His helmet rests on a chair, chinstrap dangling. To some, especially those who have never watched him move under fire, he looks like a staff officer who wandered too far forward. That assumption has followed him for years. A captain leans in, voice low. German Panzer units have broken through the American line. Elements of the 21st Panzer Division, reinforced by remnants of the 10th, are pulling back into a shallow basin west of the town. Their fuel is low. Their routes east are cut. Their commanders are requesting parley. Rose does not look up immediately. He listens. Then he straightens, rolls the map once, tight and decisive. He says he will go himself. Outside, the soundscape sharpens. The clatter of half-tracks. The cough of a Sherman engine starting. The dry snap of small arms fire far off, like someone breaking sticks. Staff officers protest. This is not a job for a general. German armor does not surrender. Not to Americans. Not yet. Not here. They remind him that his reputation is administrative, logistical, paper-heavy. He was trained for planning, not brinkmanship. Rose puts on his helmet. He has been hearing versions of this his entire career. That he is too calm, too organized, too precise to belong at the edge of a battlefield. They did not see him years earlier, a young officer riding forward in France in the First World War, wounded and captured, already learning how the enemy thinks when pressure closes in. He steps outside into the sun. The air smells of cordite and diesel. An armored car waits, its crew tense, glancing toward the low hills where German tanks have been reported hull down. Rose climbs in without ceremony. The vehicle lurches forward, suspension groaning over rutted ground. As they move, wreckage appears in pieces. A burned-out M3 half-track, blackened and split open. A Sherman with its turret blown askew, gun frozen at an accusing angle toward the sky. The crew is gone. There are no bodies. Just the smell of scorched paint and hot metal cooling in the open air. Rose studies the terrain as they pass. He notes firing positions, fallback routes, where a panzer commander would place his guns to cover retreat. He is not guessing. He is calculating. Ahead, a white cloth is tied to a rifle and raised above a shallow depression. German soldiers stand beside it, helmets dusty, faces drawn. Their weapons are slung, but close at hand. Behind them, partially concealed, sit tanks with their guns depressed, not firing, not advancing. The armored car slows. Rose steps out alone. The silence here is heavy. No artillery. No engines. Just wind moving through grass and the distant clank of cooling steel. A German officer approaches, boots crunching, posture stiff with formality. He salutes. He asks for the American commander. Rose returns the salute. He gives his name and rank. There is a pause, small but telling. The German officer looks past him, searching for someone else. Someone older. Someone more imposing. Someone who looks like the sort of man who would accept the surrender of armor. Rose meets his eyes and waits. This is the moment where reputations collide with reality, where doctrine meets exhaustion, where a desk officer, as they thought, stands at the front of a broken panzer force with nothing but his presence and the quiet certainty of someone who knows the battle has already turned. The German officer gestures toward the basin. He says his commander wishes to speak. Terms are to be discussed. Rose nods once. There will be no terms. He walks forward, into the shallow bowl of land where German tanks sit silent, their crews watching, wondering how the war has shifted beneath their feet. Into the basin of steel. The ground dips gently, forming a shallow bowl scarred by tank tracks and shell craters. Rose walks downhill at an unhurried pace, boots crunching on gravel and broken stone. Around him, German armor sits in loose formation. Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks, their paint dulled by dust, hatches open just enough for crews to breathe the cold morning air. Some men sit on the hulls, helmets off, faces streaked with sweat and grime. Others remain inside, eyes fixed forward through narrow vision slits. These are not routed troops. They are intact, disciplined, dangerous, and they know it. A senior German officer steps forward from beside a command tank. Oberstleutnant by the insignia. His uniform is neat despite the conditions. He removes his gloves carefully before speaking, as if this detail still matters. He introduces himself and gestures toward the surrounding armor. His tone is formal, almost courteous. He explains that his force has been ordered to regroup, that fuel shortages and air attacks have complicated movement, that he is authorized to discuss conditions under which hostilities might cease in this sector. Rose listens without interrupting. Behind him, American vehicles remain out of sight, deliberately held back. No show of force, no bluff of numbers. Rose understands the psychology at play. These German crews have fought British armor for years. They have only recently begun to face Americans in strength. They still believe the Americans inexperienced, hesitant, untested. Rose lets that belief linger for a moment. Then he speaks. He says the basin is surrounded. That American artillery has firing solutions already plotted. That air support can be called within minutes. He does not raise his voice. He does not gesture. He states facts as if reading inventory from a clipboard. The German officer narrows his eyes. He has heard such claims before. He glances toward the ridgelines, scanning for gun flashes, aircraft, movement. There is none. Rose continues. He explains that escape routes east are cut, that any attempt to break out will be met with concentrated fire. He names roads. He names villages. He names the very wadi the German column used the night before to approach Sidi Bou Zid. The German officer stiffens. These are not guesses. Rose then says the words that shift the air completely. He says surrender will be unconditional. Weapons secured. Vehicles disabled. Crews to assemble under guard. Medical aid will be provided. Officers will retain personal effects. There will be no negotiated withdrawal. No temporary ceasefire. No face-saving maneuver. The German officer looks at him, truly looks now. This American general is not bluffing. And he is not bargaining. A long silence follows. Wind moves through the basin, rattling loose canvas and antennae. Somewhere a tank engine ticks as metal cools. A German crewman wipes his face with a rag, hands shaking slightly. Another lights a cigarette and then stops, glancing at his officer for permission he does not yet have. The Oberstleutnant asks for time to confer with his superiors. Rose nods. He gives him 10 minutes. The German officer walks back toward his command tank. A small group of officers gathers around him. Heads lean close. Maps come out. Fingers trace lines that go nowhere. They know their fuel state. They know their ammunition count. They know how many tanks were lost in the last 48 hours to air attack alone. They also know what happens if they try to fight their way out. They have seen American artillery. They have seen American fighter bombers dive without warning. 10 minutes pass. The German officer returns. His posture has changed. The stiffness remains, but there is weight in it now. He says he will surrender his force under protest, noting that the situation makes further resistance pointless. Rose accepts the surrender without comment. He orders German crews to dismount one tank at a time. Weapons are placed on the ground. Breech blocks are removed. Engines are shut down. Antennae lowered. The process is methodical, almost ritualistic. American infantry begin to appear at the rim of the basin, rifles ready but not raised. They move with practiced caution, spreading out, establishing control. Medics step forward to tend to wounded Germans without hesitation. As the surrender unfolds, more German soldiers emerge from hiding places, from foxholes dug during the night, from damaged vehicles pulled off the tracks. The number grows into the hundreds, then into the thousands. What began as a meeting between two officers becomes one of the first large-scale, unconditional armored surrenders to American forces in North Africa. Rose watches it happen, hands clasped behind his back. He does not smile. He does not gloat. This is not victory as spectacle. It is victory as outcome. Word begins to move quickly through American units. The desk officer has walked into a Panzer force and walked out with it intact and silent. And the war in Tunisia, for one quiet basin of land, has tilted irrevocably. The weight of silence after victory. The basin is quieter now than it has been in days. No engines. No shouted orders. Just the sound of boots moving through dust and the low murmur of men realizing the fight is over. German tank crews stand in loose ranks, helmets under their arms, eyes forward. Some stare at the ground. Others look toward their machines as if memorizing every dent and scrape. These tanks carried them through France, through Libya, into Tunisia. Now they sit lifeless, guns lowered, radios silent. American soldiers move among them carefully, rifles at the ready but fingers off triggers. Many are seeing surrendered German armor up close for the first time. They had been told these machines were unstoppable, that their crews were fanatical. Yet here they stand, human, exhausted, beaten not by annihilation but by calculation. Rose walks the perimeter with a small escort. He checks details personally. Guards posted, wounded treated, prisoners accounted for. He speaks briefly to American officers, quietly correcting placements, adjusting spacing. He does not allow celebration. This is still a battlefield. Discipline holds. A colonel approaches him, disbelief evident even in his attempt at formality. He confirms the count. Several hundred prisoners. Dozens of armored vehicles. Command tanks included. Rose acknowledges it with a nod. Word spreads fast. Through battalion nets. Through regimental headquarters. By late afternoon, division staff are requesting confirmation. How did this happen? Who authorized the terms? Was there resistance? There were no terms, Rose replies. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the basin, German officers are assembled separately. Rose meets with them again, briefly. He explains the next steps. Transport. Interrogation. Geneva Convention standards. His German is passable, his tone neutral. Professional. One of the German majors studies him closely and finally asks the question that has been hanging unspoken since the surrender began. He asks if Rose is truly a general. He says he expected someone different. Rose answers simply that he goes where the situation requires. That night, reports move up the chain. Intelligence officers realize the significance almost immediately. This was not a token surrender. This was an armored formation removed from the field intact. Fuel, maps, radios, codebooks. Information that will ripple forward into planning for the final push in Tunisia. By morning, the story has reached Corps headquarters. Then Army. Officers who once saw Rose as a meticulous planner now see him differently. Not reckless, not flamboyant, but decisive in the precise moment decisiveness mattered. The battlefield itself bears quiet testimony. Tanks sit where they were ordered to stop. Tracks frozen in the dust. A place where violence could have erupted and did not. Rose does not linger. Once the handover is complete, he mounts up and moves on. There are other units under pressure. Other lines that need steadying. The war does not pause for singular events, no matter how rare. Yet among the men who witnessed it, the story begins to take shape. Of a general who walked forward alone. Of a surrender achieved not by overwhelming fire, but by understanding the enemy better than they understood themselves. The desk officer label begins to crack. Reputation rewritten at the front. In the days that follow, the surrender echoes far beyond the basin where it occurred. American units advancing east encounter fewer ambushes, fewer armored counterattacks. German resistance remains determined, but something intangible has shifted. The myth of invulnerable panzer formations has taken a visible fracture. At division headquarters, maps are updated. Enemy strength markers are erased or crossed out. Staff officers trace new arrows forward with cautious confidence. When questions arise about how such a large force vanished from the field so abruptly, the answer circulates in clipped phrases. They surrendered. To Rose. Maurice Rose returns to his routines without ceremony. Morning briefings. Fuel allocations. Maintenance reports. He walks motor pools, speaking with mechanics, asking about track wear and engine failures. He visits gun positions, talking with artillery crews still smelling of propellant. To the men, this matters more than the surrender itself. He knows what they are dealing with. He listens. Among fellow officers, attitudes shift. The man once thought best suited to paperwork has demonstrated something harder to quantify. Judgment under pressure. The ability to see when force is unnecessary and when certainty alone can end a fight. British liaison officers take notice as well. They have fought the Germans in the desert since 1940. They know how rarely armored formations surrender intact. Over tea and cigarettes, they ask quiet questions. Rose answers without embellishment. He emphasizes terrain, supply, morale, timing. He does not say luck. The Tunisian campaign grinds on. Kasserine Pass still looms large in memory, a bruise that has not yet faded. But the Americans are learning quickly. Command structures tighten. Coordination improves. Confidence grows, not bravado, but belief that the enemy can be met and beaten on equal terms. Rose becomes part of that learning curve. He is increasingly forward, present where columns bunch up under fire, where roads clog with broken vehicles, where decisions cannot wait for paperwork to catch up. He has seen what hesitation costs. He has also seen what clarity can achieve. German prisoners from the surrendered Panzer Force are processed and moved rearward. Interrogations confirm what Rose suspected. Fuel shortages were severe. Air attacks relentless. Commanders unsure of higher intent. The decision to surrender was not weakness, but exhaustion meeting inevitability. The intelligence gleaned from captured equipment proves valuable. Radio frequencies, unit identifiers, tactical habits. Each detail feeds into the larger effort to compress German forces against the coast. For Rose personally, the event becomes a turning point. Not a public one yet. There are no headlines, no speeches, just a quiet reclassification in the minds of those who matter. He is not simply a planner. He is a commander who understands movement, momentum, and when to step into uncertainty himself. As the campaign in North Africa nears its conclusion, Rose's trajectory is set. He will not be held back by perception again. He will command armor in motion, not from behind a desk. The desert has rewritten his reputation in dust and steel. Lessons carried forward. When the fighting in Tunisia finally draws to a close, the battlefield does not offer a single moment of release. Victory comes as a slow tightening, a closing fist along the coast. German and Italian forces collapse into captivity by the tens of thousands. North Africa is secured. For Maurice Rose, there is no pause to reflect. Orders shift. Units redeploy. The war moves north. The surrender in the basin does not fade. It follows him, quietly, into every new assignment. Officers remember. Men talk. When Rose speaks now, there is less resistance, fewer second guesses. He has proven that decisiveness does not always look like aggression. As the U.S. Army prepares for operations in Europe, armored doctrine evolves. Lessons from the desert are folded into training schedules and field manuals. The importance of tempo. The vulnerability of even elite units when cut off. The psychological weight of air superiority. Rose's experience fits neatly into this emerging understanding. He takes command of armored formations with the same approach he showed in Tunisia. Forward presence. Clear intent. No theatrics. He expects his officers to understand not just their orders, but the reason behind them. When things change, and they always do, he wants them to adapt without waiting. Men notice where he positions himself. Not far back. Not recklessly forward. Always where the flow of battle can be felt. In England, then later in France, his reputation grows again, this time openly. He commands with speed and confidence during the breakout from Normandy. He pushes armor hard, knowing that hesitation gives the enemy time to recover. He accepts risk, but only informed risk. Those who once called him a desk officer no longer use the term. They speak instead of a commander who sees the whole field. Yet the moment in Tunisia remains unique. A reminder that leadership is not only about firepower or rank. It is about recognizing when the enemy has already lost and having the resolve to step forward and say so. Rose carries that lesson with him across Europe. The measure of a commander. By the spring of 1945, Maurice Rose is no longer underestimated by anyone who knows his name. He commands one of the fastest-moving armored divisions in the U.S. Army, pushing deep into Germany as the Third Reich collapses in fragments. His headquarters is rarely still. Maps change hourly. Columns advance, halt, pivot, and surge again. Yet the measure of his command can still be traced back to a quiet basin in Tunisia 2 years earlier. There, he learned that momentum is not only physical. It is psychological. It can be broken without a shot when pressure, position, and certainty align. He learned that leadership sometimes means walking forward alone, absorbing risk so others do not have to. In March 1945, near Paderborn, Rose again places himself at the front. The war is nearly over, but it is not yet done. German units remain dangerous, unpredictable. In the confusion of a sudden encounter, Rose confronts enemy armor at close range. This time, there is no negotiation. A single burst of fire ends his life instantly. The news hits his division hard. Men who followed him through France and Germany struggle to reconcile the loss. He had survived the deserts of North Africa, the hedgerows of Normandy, the crossings of rivers under fire. And now, at the edge of victory, he is gone. But his legacy is already set. He is remembered not only for how he died, but for how he led. For understanding that command is not distance but presence. That authority comes not from insignia alone, but from judgment exercised at the decisive moment. The surrender in Tunisia stands as a quiet proof of that truth. An entire panzer force laid down its arms not because it was crushed, but because one commander recognized the moment and acted without hesitation. They dismissed him as a desk officer. History did not.